Some people face the world of information with a manipulative take. They think, how can I get people to believe things that aren't true? Others of us, like you most likely, and like me, think, how can I help people understand the world around us? That should be how every journalist thinks. It isn't. Lots of people enter this field to manipulate, to help deceive you. It's why giant partisan media exist. It's the reason state-run media from autocratic regimes exist. And it's how mainstream media has gotten poisoned. To understand how the rest of us can fight back, we need to understand the human mind. That is why I'm bringing you a guest today. She is the one person I knew I had to have on this show before I even launched it. It's time. She is brilliant and has coined a new term that can help anyone envision what happens inside our subconscious minds when we are told things, especially when we are told things over and over. She is not a neuroscientist, but the top neuroscientist at what is considered the nation's top business school has signed off on her work. That's how impressive it is. When you hear her explain how people become persuaded subconsciously, you'll see why news agencies keep doing the anti-journalistic things they're doing. The manipulation isn't just what we're aware of. There's something else going on underneath. And you'll come to see how you and I, all of us, can fight back. We can help guide our fellow humans away from lies and toward reality. Hey, that's why this show exists. Also ahead, new examples of why this is so necessary. FBI crime statistics fly in the face of something Trump is saying, and a major news agency just sits there, literally, while a supporter of terrorism says something insane and dangerous. Plus, an announcement about Instagram. All that and more coming up on They Stand Corrected. Hello and welcome. So great to have you here. I'm Josh Levs, and this is my podcast, They Stand Corrected, which fact-checks the news. I have an announcement for you. I get to meet some of you. I am setting up a webinar on Zoom, and I'm aiming to do this in small groups for each webinar. That way, everyone can get a chance to talk and share your ideas and questions and things you want fact-checked. For information about all that, check out the link in the show notes or go to my newsletter. With each episode, I put out a newsletter. It's filled with links and images, all kinds of information. Unlike the media, I don't expect you to take my word for anything. For those of you who don't know, I spent 20 years in mainstream media on NPR and then CNN, where I became lead on-air fact checker. But you know what really needs fact checking? The media. Now that I'm outside of the mainstream media, I'm able to do that. I can be a much better truth teller out from under all that bureaucracy. On this show, I tackle topics usually that listeners bring me. I keep getting lots of questions from you all. I have a question here from a listener about the national debt. I'll be getting to that later in this episode. But first, I want to jump into this interview because this is something I've looked forward to bringing you. Big mainstream media are very powerful. And sometimes people ask me, well, aren't we really in this era of social media? But a huge amount of what you see on social media is people responding to headlines and claims in mainstream media. So even the social media content that you're getting is very often building off of headlines, images, and claims made by these big, powerful news agencies. So they are swaying people, and not just consciously. There's something that goes on in people's minds on a subconscious level. We need to take a look at this. So today is the day to bring you Leslie Zane. She runs a company called Triggers, and she's the author of a book called The Power of Instinct. She works in marketing. She works with all these big brands to help them understand how people on a subconscious level are perceiving their brands. But she's gone beyond business, and she's doing the same thing for social phenomena, politics, everything. You'll hear about that coming up. I realized as I started recording this, her name might be familiar to you because she ended up helping to sponsor an episode not long ago. I was already planning to interview her, and then she said, hey, I would love to sponsor an episode. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this interview. I asked her how people decide how they feel about something.
Essentially, we have these two mechanisms that influence how we make decisions. One is the conscious mind. You're very aware of that. It operates very slowly. And then we have the unconscious mind or the instinctive brain, which is on all the time, but you're not even aware that it's exerting influence on you. These are also known as System 2, the conscious brain, and System 1, the unconscious brain. Daniel Kahneman has written extensively about this, but most people think that they make decisions consciously. Most people think they're in control of their decisions. And as it turns out, approximately 90 to 95% of the decisions we make are actually made by the unconscious mind. And then it's rationalized after the fact by your conscious brain. You're drawn to one brand or another, or one political view versus another by the instinctive mind. This unconscious mind of ours is being influenced all the time. Many of the memories that we have, many of the associations that we have go all the way back from childhood. It's almost like they're glued onto this brand. Over time, more and more of these memories and associations get glued to it, literally like a network of pathways. It grows and it shrinks. It's organic. These pathways can hold more and more positive memories and more positive associations. Or conversely, negative associations can get into this network of memories.
There is something called the Human Connectome Project. Researchers have been trying to map the human brain, to literally map connections in the human brain. I'll put an image in the newsletter for you. It's really cool to look at. Leslie says within that human connectome, each brand has its own connectome.
You can go into that human connectome and you can just pull out the pathways, the associations, and memories related to a single brand. We help our client to understand what the brand connectome for their brand looks like in the unconscious mind of two groups, customers and non-customers. And by analyzing those two things, we as the so-called sort of brand doctors can diagnose exactly what's wrong with your brand and how you can get the growth target, the people you don't have yet, to come over and be customers.
And in this context, brands are also movements, issues, political candidates.
Everything is a brand. President Trump is a brand. Vice President Kamala Harris is a brand. Israel is a brand. The Jewish people are a brand. African Americans are a brand. Everything is a brand.
Okay, I'm jumping back in here. You might think, wait, really? How do we know that she knows this? Aha, here's what I came to understand. She does this for businesses, like some of the biggest household name corporations. And follow me here because you'll see why it's so important to understand this for the news. When these brands, like products that you might buy, when their sales are slumping, she works with people who like that brand, don't like that brand, to dig into the associations and memories that they have with that brand on a subconscious level. It's not spooky stuff. It can be done. Anyway, she finds what's going wrong in those brand connectomes and then tells the companies, and then they do what she says to fix the problem and their sales go up. And we know this because they say so. This sounds like I'm advertising her. I'm not. I just want you to know why I've learned to have so much faith in the way she envisions the mind. Quotes on her website from these big companies say, yeah, wow, this worked. So you don't have to think that there's literally a physical thing that someone will be able to show you someday that is a brand connectome. You can think of it as a way of envisioning what happens. But either way, this works. She has taken that idea and looked at how this same system affects, for example, our politics.
And here's the crazy thing. These candidates, the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, people are either for or against each of these things and choose the exact same way they choose Coke or Pepsi. What we know about brands is that they thrive on positive associations, but they decline based on negative associations. And we also know that the brain is much more likely to click on and pay attention to negative news rather than positive news, or said another way, negative associations versus positive associations.
Right. That would explain why so much of the time what you see is right-wing media, sure, praising Trump, but more pointing out horrible things or saying horrible things about Democrats, and vice versa. Left-wing media, sure, saying some things they like about Democrats, but mostly saying how horrible Trump is. The constant influx of negative associations helps to expand the negative side of that brand Connectome, which cements people's position where they are. Is that right?
100%. It's like a game of Monopoly. Whoever owns the most physical territory in the brain wins.
That process is also how you can change minds. Like, you can give them an avalanche of negative associations with something and positive associations with something else in order to win them over to your side.
And that is, by the way, completely contradictory to what most people think. Most people think that these negative associations and these barriers are permanent, and that is a myth.
People who want to manipulate you are already using these tools to give you an avalanche of negatives. This is why so many people who follow right-wing media seriously thought that Kamala Harris is some sort of unintelligent person who is incapable of formulating a sentence and spends most of her time laughing like a crazy person. They literally thought this. She isn't like that. Whether you support her or not, doesn't matter. She is an intelligent human being who is capable of formulating a sentence. And yes, also sometimes speaks in a word salad. These things happen. But when you pay attention to certain media and you keep seeing certain things over and over and over again, it seeps into your subconscious mind and makes you pretty firm in the way that you see things. And it applies with what the mainstream media is doing as well. People in the media don't always know why this is working, but they keep finding that when they give people an avalanche of negatives about something, they get more traffic. And the audience becomes more voracious for even worse negatives to get worked up over. That and how we can be the antidote to this mental poison from the media coming up.
Mind games on the bullseye. Hit me with a wink, then watch me cry. You twist the rules, I trace the frame. Still stuck inside your picture. Mind games, and I'm wide-eyed, dreaming in a maze you design. I see the trick, but not the end. You pull the strings, I just pretend.
As a rule, I don't do social media battles, and I encourage other people not to as well. They're generally just a waste of time. But social media can be a great tool to get people truth. In fact, social media is an important tool to fight back in the mimetic warfare and influencing brand Connectomes, two things you've heard about on this show. You can find me on social media on most of the platforms. I have my name. And since I am no expert at creating pretty graphics, I am happy to say that a listener to this show is now helping me with the content I'm sharing on Instagram. He is at Gabe Draws, Gabe Draws. He is awesome. Thank you, Gabe. So if you are on social media platforms, find me at Josh Lebs. You will see that sometimes somebody posts a lie and I reply and I say, that's factually untrue. Here are some facts. But that's not a battle because I don't go back and look at whether they even replied to that. So not wasting my time on that. Focusing on putting this together for you. But I see your shares, your likes, the way you amplify that content, and it helps drive the audience for this show. So let's hook up there on social media platforms at Josh Lebs, JoshLevs. The things people come to believe on a subconscious level have a huge effect on the real world. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. It's around us all the time. As I record this, Trump has announced plans to overtake Washington, D.C.'s police force. He says the city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals. City officials point out that crime is already decreasing. But I've seen this over the years, especially when it comes to crime. People's feelings are often very different from reality. Studies show that people think violent crime is increasing, even though overall it has been decreasing for decades. It's how they feel, including on a subconscious level, based on images they see, things they hear, the associations they have. So, many Americans see Trump as being tougher on crime. The idea that he is the one to stop lawlessness helped him win the election. I went back and checked on this. Crime was a big issue for people who voted for him. Trump constantly described American carnage and the need for law and order. And he, of course, had help from right-wing media. Here's a report Fox did last year about a march in Washington.
Folks attending the event insist crime out of control despite White House claims that it's going down. Griff Jenkins joins us live from Washington. Griff.
Hey, Brian, good morning. And you're right. Some 3,000 crime survivors from over 30 states will march on the Mall today, raising awareness for public safety and demanding policy reforms that prioritize the needs of crime victims.
Fox also pointed to a different set of data. This gets confusing, and I'll post about it in the newsletter if you want to read about it. But basically, there's a survey that includes people who say they experienced crime but never reported it to police. And when you slice and dice those figures, you can find data points that suggest certain types of crimes might have been up. But here's why that's certainly not relevant now. Trump himself, last year and earlier this year, trashed data sources that showed crime going down under Biden. And now he is pointing to those same sources to say, look, I'm lowering crime. Literally the same sources. Meanwhile, it's important to note that violent crime went up during the last year of Trump's first term in 2020 during COVID. That, by the way, was pretty much a uniquely American problem. Other countries in general did not see a huge spike in violent crime. And now, new figures are out showing that crime continued to fall last year under Biden. This just came out the other day. Violent crime dropped 15% last year, according to these new FBI statistics. But people don't feel that way, and that gets at the subconscious mind. Now, this same report did find something awful. While crime went down, hate crimes against Jewish people went up. I'll include links about this in the newsletter. The highest number of anti-Jewish hate crimes ever recorded. What a coincidence that these hate crimes are happening as the mainstream media clobbers this country over the head with lies about Jewish people and the tiny Jewish state every day. An investigation in Germany's biggest newspaper just found that this photographer in Gaza has, of course, been staging photos of women and children holding empty pots to signify hunger at sites in which it's actually mostly men and people are getting food. This is not what famine looks like. Or here's another new example. This pro-terror radical from Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil. I've discussed him in the past. He openly violated a law for people on green cards by supporting terrorist groups and handing out their propaganda. Mainstream media, of course, loves him. And in this new interview with the disastrous New York Times, Ezra Klein, here is what Mahmoud Khalil said about the October 7th massacres.
Unfortunately, we couldn't avoid such a moment, and yeah, it was absolutely difficult, to see not only the horrific images, but also the response of Israel.
The images were the problem, and the response, not the evil atrocities carried out by folks that day. And couldn't avoid those massacres, just had to happen. Big news organizations like the Times don't let people say stuff like this about terrorist attacks anywhere else. But to them, this kind of thing makes sense, even though it doesn't rationally, because they have so incredibly many negative associations with Israel and positive associations with anything involving the term Palestinian that they can't see straight. They can't apply basic journalistic standards. And by the way, Ezra Klein, of course, did not fact-check any of the crazy claims Khalil made in that interview. Leslie Zane has looked into how people's brand connectomes on this have been reshaped over time.
Unfortunately, it's not only the media. It is now everywhere. For 20 to 30 years, there has been a highly effective branding campaign against Israel and the Jewish people. And it follows the same exact principles that make a great brand campaign successful. The first is repetition. The same words, genocide, apartheid, and colonizer, are hammered into the public consciousness. They do this through a technique called a placard strategy. So if I put up a placard and I have Israel or Israel's flag on the left, and then to the right, I have three words, genocide, apartheid, and colonizer. If I keep creating those same associations over and over again in this placard strategy, little by little, the brain is going to believe that that association is truth, even though it may be completely fabricated. So the first one is repetition. The second is simplicity. Our brains are lazy. We don't like to do a lot of thinking. We don't like to do a lot of homework. We don't like to do a lot of reading.
I know that's true in the media.
100%. The simplicity of these messages fit very neatly into the brain's binary thinking. There is a very binary construct that's being used here, which is oppressor versus oppressed and good versus evil. They are trying very hard and succeeding at branding Israel as evil and putting it on the evil side of the mental paradigm. It's really a character assassination.
And there should be trustworthy sources of truth that help correct some of that. But what we have is a media echoing this process and trying to appeal to people who have these connectomes so that they will click and watch.
Yeah. We have seen that anti-Semitism never really went away. It's thousands of years old, as you know, blood libel and all the things that Jews have been blamed for. But it generally stayed latent during the aftermath of the Holocaust, partly because it was socially unacceptable. But it's like it was a virus, and it was building up over the past 30 years because of the boycott, divest, sanction movement and the Muslim Brotherhood, Students for the Justice of Palestine. All of these groups have been slowly building. They have a very long-term strategy. But then not on 10/7, but when Israel struck back, it essentially gave them the ability to take that virus and make it metastasize and externalize so that now it's acceptable. As you see, anti-Semitism is out of control.
Have you looked at people's intake of news? Like if people get news from certain places, they are more or less likely to be anti-Israel, anti-Semitic?
Well, what we know is if the brain is trapped in an echo chamber where the same negative associations are coming at them over and over again, it's going to be completely validating and confirming the point of view that they already have. So if you are on the progressive left and you are getting all of this information about how terrible Israel is, then you're going to continue to believe that, mostly because you're not hearing anything else. So your brand connectome doesn't have the chance to get balanced out. Anti-Semitism is only one of the products of this era. The terrible polarization, the fact that people can't discuss politics over dinner, over Thanksgiving, all of this is because our Republican and Democrat connectomes have become so extreme. One of the most fascinating things is if you take two people who have completely different connectomes, right? Now put these two people in a room and say, hey, we're going to just talk politics. They're going to pretty much start hyperventilating. Their faces are going to get red. They may feel like punching each other. But this goes back to work that was done by Professor Michael Platt at Wharton. What he saw was that if you criticize somebody's brand that they care about a lot and have a lot of affinity for, the same part of the brain lights up that feels pain.
Wow.
That's wild.
This gets to something that I've talked about on the show and that I've thought about a lot, which is the way that we raise kids in society, that we raise them to believe that their intelligence is reflected by how well they dig in and argue for a position. But the kind of intelligence that we need is the opposite. It's what can I learn about this? the curiosity, the open-mindedness, the wanting to learn. We're not training into their minds early on that is the real reflection of intelligence. So people hear someone trash something they already think, and they're like, no, 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 this cannot possibly be. I now must reject that and argue rather than thinking, wait a second, maybe this is an opportunity for me to learn something.
I totally think that is a phenomenon that's going on. People are not digging, they're not doing research. People would be quite upset to learn that their views about Israel, for example, have been shaped by an insidious campaign that's been operating on a subconscious level to hate this country that has done so much to help the world.
When you've got 1.2 billion Muslim people in the world, and not all of them, but a huge swath of them have been radicalized from birth. And there's only a total of 15 million Jewish people on Earth, approximately, and some of them have been radicalized against Israel as well. There's never going to be a way to compete with the number of people out there swamping the world with negatives, or is there? I mean, how can you possibly improve that brand Connectome?
You definitely have to launch a counter campaign, and that counter campaign has to provide the correct information, the true information. And there's so much truth to tell, so much good that this country does that they don't get any credit for. They're a humble people. They don't walk around telling people about their achievements.
You heard Leslie mention Dr. Michael Platt from Wharton. He's the head of the school's neuroscience initiative. He studies the brain's decision-making processes, and he signed off on her research about the brand Connectome when it was published by Knowledge at Wharton. Everything Leslie explains helps make clear what we need more of in order to combat media bias. That is coming up.
I can read your mind. Yeah, I can read your mind. I know what you like, 'cause I like it too. You don't gotta say what you wanna do, 'cause I can read your mind. Yeah, I can read your mind. I can read your mind.
Leslie Zane is right. When it comes to any topic, when people believe lies, we need to overwhelm them with truth. Big media and hate groups on social media are inundating people with false accusations that reach into their subconscious minds. The biggest way to fight back is to deliver them truth. That's the case with politics, Israel, anything. In this era, it can be tough to know what's true. I'm doing what I can to provide that for you right here. So when you share this show, tell people about it, rate and review it on the platforms, which is the way to trigger those algorithms in the right direction. When you get the newsletter, share the newsletter, sponsor an episode, become a paid subscriber. Any of these things, you are helping fight back. A paid subscriber asked me a question after a recent episode about the national debt. He sent me these two links that look at how the national debt grew under different presidents. These two links have different figures. I told him I'd look into it. I love that people want to know this stuff. So there are different ways to measure the debt for each president. You can go by the size of the national debt the day they took office and the day they left. But that isn't the full picture, because the legislation that presidents push through and the decisions presidents make lead to expenses that last for a long time after they were there. So some counts go by the fiscal year, which starts in the fall. And even that isn't always that simple, because presidents can start spending soon after they become president. So anyway, this is how you get different figures. But in the big picture, you still have the same reality. Presidents keep adding trillions of dollars to the debt. On average, Republicans create more debt than Democrats. And Trump did say when he was running the first time that he would get rid of the debt over 8 years. And instead, he immediately started increasing the debt to new levels. But somehow, despite all that, Republicans still have an image as being fiscally conservative. Why is that? Brand Connectomes. They are associated with fiscal conservatism, even when their actions are not fiscally conservative. Just as there are people associated with being progressive, when in reality, They support some of the most regressive regimes on earth, pushing Islamist law and Islamist terrorism. There is this dichotomy between reality and people's subconscious minds. Those of us who care about truth can work together to fight back. Send me your questions, ideas, thoughts, anything you think I missed. The best way is through the newsletter, and for everyone else, there is a form at my website. As always, thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.